The cockpit was quiet when I entered, just the steady hum of the engines and the occasional beep from the instruments. I adjusted my seatbelt, checked the controls, and took a deep breath. The co-pilot beside me glanced at the cockpit door, then at me. He said nothing, just went back to checking the displays. Enjoying the content? Subscribe now to stay updated on your phone. Flight 447 was scheduled to take off in 15 minutes. 237 passengers waiting at the gate. Families, executives, students, people going home, people leaving. No one knew the original captain had deplaned 3 hours earlier with a migraine. No one knew the airline had called me at 4 a.m. No one knew this was my first flight as captain. I'd logged over 2,000 hours as first officer, passed every simulation, completed every certification. But this was different. The left seat, the final word, the weight of 237 lives in a metal tube 7 miles above the ocean. The co-pilot's name was Harris, 46 years old, 15 years with the airline. He'd flown with Captain Morrison for the past 6 months. Morrison had 23 years of experience. I had 6. Harris knew this. I could see it in the way he rechecked systems I'd already cleared, the way he paused before responding to my briefings. "Pre-flight complete," I said. "Confirmed," Harris replied. His voice was flat. The flight attendant supervisor knocked twice, then opened the door. "Cabin secured, passengers seated." "Thank you, Rebecca," I said. She nodded and closed the door. Through the gap, I'd seen a man in 12C staring toward the cockpit. His eyes narrowed. Suspicious. Maybe he'd overheard something at the gate. Maybe he'd seen me walking through the terminal in my new captain's stripes, too young, too uncertain. "Ground control cleared us for pushback," I acknowledged. The tug pulled us away from the gate. Standard procedure, everything by the book, but my hands were damp against the yoke. Harris handled the radio communications during taxi. His voice was calm, professional. Mine would have been too, but I was grateful for the silence. Tower cleared us to runway 27R. Wind from the west at 8 knots. Visibility 10 miles. Perfect conditions. We held short of the runway. I ran through the final checks. Flaps set, trim configured, anti-ice off, everything green. "Flight 447 cleared for takeoff runway 27R, Tower said. I pressed the transmit button. "Cleared for takeoff 27R, flight 447. My first words to Tower as captain. They sounded normal, professional. No one could hear the pulse hammering in my throat. I advanced the throttles. The engines spooled up. The aircraft began to roll. Harris called out the speeds. 80 knots. The runway centerline blurred beneath us. V1, the point of no return. Rotate. I pulled back on the yoke. The nose lifted. The main gear left the ground. We were airborne. "Positive rate," Harris said. "Gear up," I replied. The landing gear retracted with a heavy thunk. We climbed through 1,000 feet, then 2,000. The city fell away beneath us. I engaged the autopilot at 3,000 feet. My shoulders dropped half an inch. Harris glanced at me. Brief, assessing, then back to his instruments. The first hour passed without incident. We reached cruise altitude. Flight attendants began service. I heard the cart rolling down the aisle through the cockpit door. Coffee, juice, pretzels. Normal. Enjoying the content? Subscribe now to stay updated on your phone. Then the turbulence started. Light at first, just a few bumps. Harris and I exchanged a look. I checked the weather radar. A small cell 30 miles ahead. Yellow, not red, manageable. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some light chop," I said over the PA. "Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts." The bumps grew stronger. The aircraft shuddered. Not violent, but noticeable. I adjusted our altitude, requesting flight level 380 from center. They approved. We climbed. The ride smoothed. But then the radar changed. The yellow cell ahead was expanding, growing, turning orange at the edges. "That wasn't there 10 minutes ago," Harris said. I contacted dispatch. They confirmed. A line of storms building faster than predicted. We had 3 options: go around, go through a gap, or turn back. Fuel was adequate, but not generous. Going around meant an extra 40 minutes. Going back meant delay, rebooking, passenger complaints. The gap looked viable. Tight, but viable. "I'll take us through the gap," I said. Harris said nothing for 3 seconds. Copy. Not agreement, just acknowledgement. I adjusted course. The gap was 20 miles wide between 2 cells. Radar showed green, clear air. We'd be through in 5 minutes. But weather doesn't care about radar. We entered the gap at 38,000 feet. The sky ahead looked clear. Then the aircraft dropped. A sudden, violent downdraft. My stomach lurched. Overhead bins rattled. Someone screamed in the cabin. "Secure the cabin," I ordered over the intercom. The turbulence intensified. The aircraft shook. Hard. The yoke fought against my hands. Harris gripped his armrests. The nose pitched up, then down. I fought to maintain altitude, but we were losing. 3,700 feet. 37,000. The altimeter unwound. "Increasing power," I said. I advanced the throttles. The engines roared. We stopped descending, but the shaking didn't stop. The wings flexed. Metal groaned. This wasn't light chop. This was moderate to severe. And then the lightning started. A flash. Brilliant white. The cockpit lit up like daylight for half a second. Thunder followed immediately. The aircraft shuddered. Another flash. Closer. The hair on my arms stood up. "We need to get out of this," Harris said. His voice was tight. "Working on it," I replied. I requested an immediate turn from center. They cleared us direct to a waypoint 40 miles south. I banked the aircraft. 30 degrees. The turbulence fought me. The yoke jerked. My shoulders burned from the effort. We turned. Slowly. The compass swung, the lightning continued. Flash. 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 Each one closer than the last. The static on the radio was deafening. And then we broke through. The shaking stopped. The sky ahead was dark but clear. No more lightning. No more drops. Just smooth air and the steady hum of engines. I exhaled, long, slow. Harris looked at me. "Nice flying." I nodded. Didn't trust my voice yet. The rest of the flight was quiet. We descended into our destination without incident. The passengers deplaned. Some thanked the crew. Most just hurried off, eager to leave. No one mentioned the turbulence. Maybe they'd already forgotten. Rebecca stopped by the cockpit. "That was rough." "Yeah," I said. "You handled it well." I didn't respond, just gathered my charts and flight bag. Harris was the last to leave. He paused at the door. Morrison would have turned back. I looked at him. "But you got us through," he continued. "That counts." He left. I sat alone in the cockpit for a moment. The instruments were dark now, silent. Just the faint creaking of cooling metal. Enjoying the content? Subscribe now to stay updated on your phone. The hotel was 15 minutes from the airport. Generic. Clean. A bed, a desk, a TV I wouldn't watch. I dropped my bag and sat on the edge of the mattress. My hands were still shaking. Adrenaline, probably. Or delayed fear. Hard to tell. I thought about the gap. The decision. Morrison would have turned back. Harris was right. Morrison had the experience to know better. To recognize the risk. To choose caution over schedule. But I'd made a different call. And we'd gotten through. This time. My phone buzzed. A text from scheduling. Another flight tomorrow. Early departure. I'd be captain again. The left seat. The final word. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I set an alarm and turned off the light. The next morning started the same. Pre-flight, passengers, gate. But this time, as I walked through the terminal, a man in 19B stopped me. "You're the captain?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I said. He looked me up and down, young face, new stripes. "Where's the real pilot?" The question hung in the air. Other passengers nearby turned to look. A woman with a stroller, a businessman with a laptop bag, a teenager with headphones, all watching. I met the man's eyes. "I am the pilot." He frowned. "You look 12. I'm 29, 6 years with the airline. Over 2,000 flight hours, fully certified. That's supposed to make me feel better?" I didn't answer immediately, because the truth was, I didn't know if it should. I thought about the gap, the turbulence, the lightning, the choice Morrison wouldn't have made. "I understand your concern," I said finally, "but I'm qualified, and I'll get you there safely." The man stared at me for another long moment. Then he shook his head and walked back to his seat. The other passengers dispersed. Crisis averted. Or maybe just postponed. Harris was already in the cockpit when I arrived. He glanced up. "Heard about 19B. News travels fast." "Always does." He returned to his checklist. "Ignore it. You're captain. That's all that matters." But it wasn't all that mattered. Because every decision I made, every call on the radio, every adjustment to course or altitude would be judged not just on outcome, but on perception. Too young. Too new. Too uncertain. The flight to Denver was smooth. No weather. No turbulence. Just clear skies and steady wind. Textbook. We landed 12 minutes early. The passengers deplaned without incident. No complaints. No confrontations. Rebecca stopped by again. "Much better than yesterday." "Different day," I said. "Still, you're doing fine." I nodded, but I wasn't sure I believed her. The third flight was to Phoenix. Another early departure. Another full cabin. This time, no one questioned me in the terminal. Maybe word hadn't spread. Maybe the passengers didn't care. But halfway through the flight, a warning light appeared. Hydraulic pressure low in System B, not critical. We had redundancy, but it needed attention. I ran through the checklist. Harris monitored. The pressure stabilized. The light went out. Standard procedure, no emergency. But I thought about what would have happened if it hadn't stabilized. If the pressure had dropped further. If we'd needed to divert. Would the passengers have trusted me then? Would Harris? We landed in Phoenix without issue. The maintenance crew checked the hydraulic system. A minor leak. Easily repaired. I filed the report and moved on. That night, in another generic hotel room, I called my father. He'd been a captain for 30 years before retiring. 3 decades in the left seat. "How's it going?" he asked. "Fine," I said. Silence. He knew me better than that. "It's hard," I admitted. "People look at me and see a kid. They don't see the hours, the training, the certifications." "They never do," he said. "Not at first." "When does it change?" "When you stop caring what they see." I didn't respond. "You're qualified," he continued. "You earned that seat. The rest is just noise." "But what if I make the wrong call?" "You will," he said. "Everyone does. Morrison's made dozens, so have I. The question isn't whether you'll make mistakes. It's whether you'll learn from them." We talked for a few more minutes. Then I thanked him and hung up. His words didn't make the doubt disappear, but they made it quieter. The 4th flight was back to where I'd started. A return trip. Full circle. The passengers boarded without incident. Harris ran through the pre-flight. Everything normal. But as we pushed back from the gate, I saw him. The man from 19B. He was on this flight too. Same suspicious stare. Same tight jaw. He didn't approach me. Didn't say anything. Just watched as I walked past his row toward the cockpit. I could feel his eyes on my back. Harris noticed. "Same guy?" "Yeah. He'll get over it." Maybe. Or maybe he'd complain to the airline. Maybe he'd demand a different pilot. Maybe he'd post about it online and 100 people would agree with him. Too young. Too inexperienced. Too risky. But the flight proceeded normally. We climbed, we cruised, we descended. The landing was smooth. One of my best. The passengers deplaned. Most didn't look at me. A few said thank you. The man from 19B said nothing. Just walked past with his carry-on and disappeared into the terminal. I never saw him again. Over the next few weeks, the flights blurred together. Cities, airports, hotels. Some passengers questioned me. Most didn't. Harris grew more comfortable. His responses came quicker. His checks became less redundant. He started trusting my decisions. Other captains noticed. In crew lounges, at briefings. The younger guy in the left seat. Some ignored me. Others offered advice. A few shared their own stories. First flights, bad weather, close calls, mistakes. Everyone had made mistakes. One Captain Chen pulled me aside after a flight. She'd been with the airline for 18 years. "I heard about the gap," she said. I tensed. "Morrison would have turned back," she continued. "He told me." "I know. But you didn't." "No." She studied me for a moment. "That wasn't wrong. It was different. Morrison plays it safe. Always has. That's his style. But safe isn't always right. Sometimes you have to trust your judgment. Even when I'm wrong?" "Especially then," she said, "because that's when you learn." She walked away. I stood there for a long time thinking about her words. 3 months passed, then 6. The flights became routine. The doubt faded. Not completely, but enough. I made calls, some good, some questionable. I learned, adjusted, improved. Harris got reassigned to another captain. We shook hands in the crew lounge. "You're solid," he said. "Thanks." "Seriously, Morrison's got more experience, but you've got instinct. Don't lose that." I nodded. He left. I flew with a new co-pilot, then another, each one different, each one teaching me something. And slowly, imperceptibly, the left seat started to feel like mine. 1 year after my first flight as captain, I was scheduled for a red-eye to Boston. Another routine trip. Another full cabin. I walked through the terminal, flight bag over my shoulder, cap on my head. A man stopped me near the gate. Older, 60s maybe, suit and tie. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you the captain?" Here we go again, I thought. "Yes, sir," I said. He extended his hand. "Just wanted to say thank you. My daughter flew with you 6 months ago. Turbulence over the Rockies. She said you handled it brilliantly. Made her feel safe." I shook his hand. "Just doing my job." "Still, it matters," he smiled. "Safe flight." He walked away. I stood there, hand still raised, staring after him. It matters. The flight to Boston was smooth. The landing was clean. The passengers deplaned without incident. Rebecca waved as she left. The co-pilot gathered his things and headed out. I sat alone in the cockpit for a moment. The instruments were dark, the engines silent, just the faint hum of auxiliary power and the distant sound of ground crew outside. I thought about the man in 19B, the gap, the turbulence, the lightning, Morrison's voice in my head, Harris's trust, Chen's advice, my father's words. And I thought about the man at the gate, his daughter, 6 months ago. Turbulence over the Rockies. She'd felt safe. I gathered my flight bag and stood. The cockpit door closed behind me with a soft click. The terminal was quiet. Late night. Just a few passengers waiting for connecting flights. Janitors pushing wide brooms across the floor. I walked toward the exit. Tomorrow there'd be another flight, another city, another crew, more decisions, more doubt, more learning. But tonight, I went back to the hotel, set my alarm, turned off the light, and slept.